I have to tell you, this show, I came to it late. I got to it a little later than everybody else. Um, this is not a show that I would typically say that or typically admit that I binged to really quickly. Um, I don't remember a show that I had such I sort of can't describe this sort of like hypnotic pull to keep watching it. I don't know if it's because the emotions are like all the way up here for
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
I just think it's really special, and um, I don't know. I feel like I was really affected by it. So, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
thank you for saying those very kind words. I think it is a show that really resonates in ways
mhm,
that I feel a lot of audience members can't put quite their thumb on,
mhm,
but it's this sense of feeling and quite honestly, this connection to humanity
yeah,
amongst other characters that you see grieving or experiencing these certain things that
mhm,
innately reflect on yourselves universally. And I think that might be the pull back into, wanting to continue to watch this television series.
yeah. Like for years now, we were talking about like ambitious television, but I feel like this is one of the most emotionally ambitious shows that I've seen in a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Um, I guess I wanted to begin with I wanted to know, everything sort of falls around the time of a very big, traditionally big birthday for Clarke, the 50th birthday.
Yeah.
And I was curious because I don't think it's answered. Maybe I'll hear that on a rewatch, but I guess I was just wondering, how do you think Clarke is anticipating turning this age? Is there anything he's looking forward to? Is this something that maybe he's dreading? I don't know. For some reason that stuck out to me.
I think Clark was experiencing what had happened with him, Margaret, the family unit, and Gus. And at this point, he's hoping to somehow turn a particular corner. I mean, it's been a
Hmm.
year since um the tragedy of Gus, and this 50th birthday, I think, to him was almost an excuse
Hmm.
to somehow find this sense of normalcy, whatever that means, because I don't
Yeah.
think you can be normal after something this devastating happens to you and your family and your loved ones. And I think, yeah, I think for Clark, it was an excuse to somehow feel like we are turning this particular corner. I think Clark is and always has been trying to find that light, that ounce of hope, that
Yeah.
sense of understanding as this is all going and processing. And I don't think there are ever any answers in that
Yeah.
sense. He's still continuing to search for them.
Yeah, I can see how maybe, I'm sure a lot of people would feel like that. It was like, all right, this is um a typical thing. We celebrate birthdays, we get dressed up, we make small talk with our friends. This sort of like casual obligation that we feel probably feels like something that would help a couple like Clarke and Margaret feel like this is just a normal day. This is, turning the page on something.
Yeah,
Um,
there's that sense of escaping the
mhm,
situation as well. And I think for anybody, 50 is kind of a big deal.
yeah.
But given the circumstances to them, not as big of a deal as what it is. But I think that sense of escape was what was something that they've been yearning for and needed, and
Hmm.
hopefully would find an answer towards in doing. But obviously, it all goes to
Hmm.
something very terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, I'm trying to think. Okay, so I do want to ask about religion because I mainly want to know. Margaret finds out that you are going to church, and Margaret discovers this, that you are using this thing that she is very much, we learn, against her upbringing, against her experiences. Do you think that if Clarke would have, I don't want to say used religion to help him get over a certain point, but do you think that he would eventually tell her that he was going to church, or do you think he would try to keep that a secret?
It's a good question. I don't think that he would tell Margaret.
Hmm.
I think Clarke needed something, anything, to somehow compartmentalize what has been happening,
Hmm.
somehow give him an answer to something, to somehow find that sense of hope, an ounce of relief that this situation is somehow supposed to figure itself out. And he
Hmm.
hasn't found that yet. And he
Yeah.
reaches to the one thing that I think him and Margaret have kind of either neglected or been against their entire lives for
Yeah.
all of their reasons. And to make that choice is a huge choice because he knows what Margaret is feeling about it.
Hmm.
And it's such a sense of desperation for him that I don't think he would reveal it if he did find certain answers, if he did somehow connect to what he was going through.
Yeah.
I think it would take an extremely long amount of time and a very long road for him to really connect and kind of give over to whatever it is that has uplifted him.
Hmm.
But then also, it's going to take that much longer of a stage for him to actually reach out to Margaret and say, "Hey, this is what had happened."
Yeah, and there's something that I love that that what the show does there is, and I don't think it necessarily acknowledges as we witness it as a as an audience, but it's sort of like this couple is going through this tragedy as a unit, but then it's also important to acknowledge that while Margaret and Clarke are married, they have to, I don't know if any other show that I can think of acknowledges that people also have to I don't say experience that grief on their own too, and that like experiencing it as a couple and experience it as an individual are two different things, and they're two very necessary journeys that people have to take.
Yeah,
So I was really drawn into that. That's that whole aspect because maybe because I'm not a religious person myself, I did not grow up with a religious upbringing. I think I would probably have the same reaction that Margaret would be like, "What? What are you doing? What do you mean?"
sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Um,
I think everyone processes grief differently.
yeah, and you don't know how you're going to react to it. So,
You have no idea, right?
yeah.
They say that there's 5 stages, but I think every single one of those stages is completely different for every person
Hmm.
dealing with their personal circumstances into what they're grieving about. And each one has to take their own journey for it.
Sure.
Even if you are the closest of
Hmm.
relationships, I think you have to take your own path as far as grieving is concerned.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to ask about when Clark and Margaret go to Shenzhen. I mean, there's a lot there, obviously. The and it made me think of Clark's admission later to Alan,
Mm,
which I had a very verbal, a very verbal reaction to it, but I also, in a way, understood where he was coming from. As awful as that might be to say. But I wanted to ask about the sequences when you and Nicole are alone in these rooms. For some reason, the echoing in those rooms really hit home to me as if everything you're saying to each other or saying to yourselves is like hitting off the walls and hitting back at you.
yeah.
You're alone, you're forced to be alone in a lot of those moments. I was just curious from maybe like a filming standpoint and maybe like getting those scenes up on their feet, how those felt because it's sort of forcing you to be isolated and confrontational with each other, but there's a beautiful music to how those scenes are written and how they're directed.
Yeah. First and foremost, the fact that you had a verbal reaction to any moment, I think, in television is a
Yeah.
gratifying feeling
I had
for
a lot to this
any
show. To be
artist.
honest, I really did.
Good,
Yeah.
good, good, good. Um, but to answer your question, I think, I think we're talking about the morgue sequence, and
Hmm.
I mean, the way that this sequence, this episode was written, the way that it was production designed,
Hmm.
I think from everything as far as lighting and sound, I think it all encapsulates what Margaret and Clark were going through.
Hmm.
Um, I think the approach is the allowance of all of these circumstances to kind of finally come to their forefront in the sense of we've been trying to find certain things and trying to find certain answers and somehow
Sure.
manipulate our own feelings into making sense of what's happening.
Hmm.
And I think at the morgue, there is none of that. We need to make sense to one another and live in the moment of exactly what that is right now.
Hmm.
And coming across what they had faced in the morgue, it's almost this sense of, well, now we're here and these are the answers. And once we
Sure.
get past this particular threshold, then everything will be okay, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's the process and the journey of really finding ourselves and our truths between one another that arcs our scene
Right.
incredibly, that arcs the episode incredibly until even till the very end, right? Which is a complete
Yeah.
surprise. Not to spoil it for anybody. Um, it's kind of the encapsulation of, I feel like, the entire series of what Margaret and Clark were going through in that particular episode.
Hmm. Yeah, that made me think of, I feel like every time we came back to you two, I was like, the episode's gonna go this way. And then I was like, no, it's gonna go this way. And then I kept guessing back and forth. And I felt like I was guessing very much up until the very end of that scene. And I really appreciated how that felt like a true test for those characters. It felt like I kept thinking these two characters are probably like, all right, if it goes this way, we have to maybe go this way, and if it goes this way, we have to go that way. I don't know. It's sort of like that scene is or that sequences of scenes is sort of not like a choose your own adventure, but it's sort of like
Yeah,
it's kind of like these are the circumstances and they can go this way, or this way, and then that's the path we have to take from that point on, if
yeah.
that makes sense.
I mean,
Yeah.
no, it 100% makes sense because I don't think, I mean, me as the audience member or me as the storyteller doesn't want the audience to know which
Hmm.
direction it's supposed to go. And I think in
Yeah.
those situations and circumstances, in those scenes, you're really not supposed to know.
Yeah.
And as far as an artist and an actor, you love those moments
Hmm.
because you get to live and breathe those moments, and whichever direction that it actually goes or it actually takes you is right, right?
Yeah.
Because it is, as long as you're embodying the character in the particular circumstances and in it, all of these twists and turns of whichever direction you think it may or may not go can completely change, and that's okay too.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Like even the best way that I can describe watching the show, because I was actually talking about the show to somebody today, and they didn't know anything about it. They were like, well, tell me why you really responded to it. And I was just like, there's a richness to the writing
Yeah,
that I can tell, even if you have questions going into the scene, the direction is equally as rich to help um supply the actors with more situations and circumstances that I love. Like you have a line, I can't remember exactly what scene it is. It's in where you said you tell her you didn't lose him. They took him because he looks like me.
yeah,
And I was just like, holy shit. Like, and then I think later the scene moves off of that line, and me as an audience member, I'm just like, there's so much in there that I
yeah.
want to know, and it leaves me like clamoring for more answers. So that I think that's another reason why I was just like on the edge of my seat moment to moment with this. Um,
Great. It's great.
I wanted to ask about The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Several things about it necessarily, but I always wonder, I was like, where does he keep his rock?
Yeah.
How often does how often do you think Clarke maybe needs it on his person? I can maybe see him tucking it into an underwear drawer in the corner, and then maybe if he wakes up feeling really shitty that day, he'll just pick it up, getting ready, put it in his pocket, and he knows
Yeah.
that it's there. I guess I just wanted to know with something like that, with a prop that has such emotional resonance to a character. Um, I guess I just want to ask about your relationship to it.
To be honest, it's a rock.
Yeah,
And
right.
very frankly, I think Clark knows that it's a rock.
Hmm.
And he's so deep into what he's experiencing or what he's trying to find as far as his answers is concerned, or trying to find that sense of hope or normalcy or whatever it is, that he will go down this path and literally believe in this rock,
Hmm.
right? And it's more of a symbolic situation, but
Yeah.
he 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 dives right into that sense. And I feel like that is the level of grief, of desperation that he had to go through to believe that this rock somehow possessed the answer. And what I love about it is that,
Hmm.
it symbolizes the depth in which we all grieve,
Yeah.
right? And the things that we will actually believe or process or go through in that context, where to Clark, he would believe in this rock wholeheartedly. And he kept it in his pocket for sure, but it was
Hmm.
just a rock in his pocket. And for me as an artist, as an actor, it's a beautiful, I guess, situation to be involved in, because it is that belief, right? It is that giving over to. And as an artist, like, you have to
Hmm.
do that no matter what. Whatever the circumstances are, the character and all this other stuff, like, that is our job. If you do not commit, you are failing.
Yeah.
And I think in going through that particular character and him believing and carrying around this particular rock, I mean, it felt very connected,
Yeah.
but very, as far as the storyteller is concerned, so incredibly symbolic in the same light.
Yeah, it's almost like, like if your character had a desk and you came in and you, even though there is no scene or script that shows what is in the drawers of the desk, what is in the drawers of the desk, and it actually can, uh, just subconsciously help shade something in for you that,
100%.
if it doesn't get brought up, it's fine because it's for you. And I love when there's something very personal to an actor, and the whole as soon as Alan brought that rock in, I kept thinking about it. I was like, is it in his pocket? Is it Where is it?
Yeah,
I kept Every time you popped up on screen, I was like, where's the rock? I kept thinking about it.
it's amazing. It's amazing.
I guess one last question before I let you go. That final moment that Clarke has with Margaret in the airport.
Hmm.
Um, I was so nervous about that when I know that they're leaving. I was wondering what was going to happen. Is she going to stay? Is she going to go? And it's the way that Nicole very plainly makes her decision, and you, well, Daisy says something really awful, and very honest to her mother. I was really shocked by that. And
Yeah,
then Clarke very simply, very quietly ushers his children into the whatever it's called, the hallway into the plane.
yeah.
And you and Nicole look at each other, and I don't know, there's something about the simplicity about that look, that exchange. I was just wondering if maybe Clarke predicted Margaret's decision.
I felt like there's was always an inkling in Clark that she could not get on the plane.
Hmm.
And in understanding that, I think Clark still continued to had to go through the processes and see what would happen.
Yeah.
I think very much Clark at that point in time knew what he needed to do, right? He has two other children that he has to take care of, and he knew that the answers weren't necessarily staying in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But what he grounded himself in is that, and what I love about this character and both characters, both Margaret and Clark, is their relationship. They loved one another, and there wasn't
Oh
ever
yeah.
a moment where they decided or felt like we need to separate in order to do this. It was, we're going to try to do this together no matter what. And
Hmm.
even if we have to be in different continents, we're still going to be together. And then
Hmm.
at that moment, I feel like that's where Clark was at. And as we were talking about the five stages of grief, right? Acceptance is one of the major ones.
Yeah.
You can feel these in any kind of stage at any timeline as far as your grieving status is concerned, but I really kind of honed in on that moment of his acceptance,
Yeah.
right? Not necessarily his acceptance that Gus is gone, right? Because I think that there's always hope that somehow answers will be revealed,
Right.
but the acceptance that this is his life and what he needs to do, and also the acceptance of Margaret's journey.
Yeah.
So what you felt was all of that, I think, coming together into one as far as the last moment between Margaret and Clark were concerned.
Yeah. There's something about the way that you get on the plane and the way that later when the series is ending, that when she's just walking through and she's, you know, she almost sort of sticks out because I mean Nicole Kidman, this gorgeous tall person, and it's sort of like I thought that where these two people are, it sort of goes along with the this is what these two people need to do.
Hmm?
This is what they and they're honest about that, and I love that
Yeah,
that they're like they need to do this,
yeah,
and however much time it takes for them to, you know, be reunited, that'll come in time.
yeah.
Um, I will
Absolutely.
say just a super silly comment before I let you go that for some there's I think it's in episode two in the flashback when Clark and Margaret are smoking pot by the window, and
Sure.
then it was just like no husband should smoke pot with Nicole Kidman's character because the last time I remember something like that happening was Tom Cruise and Eyes Wide Shut, and that led them both on a whole other journey. So I
True.
guess any character who was married to Nicole Kidman don't get stoned in the bedroom with her because a revelation is about to happen.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Rule of thumb, for
just rule of
sure.
thumb.
Luckily, we're playing two different characters, but
Yes.
yeah, that was a really fun moment and a
Yeah.
fun thing to be a part of. Sure.
Well, thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
I love the show so much. Yeah.
I'm so glad it resonated with you. I feel like it resonates with a lot of people that don't haven't even quite tuned in yet in that sense, because
Yeah.
it's it's one of these shows that lives with you. You're just talking about the ending, and I feel like Nicole continues on, or the character Margaret continues on, and it continues to live with you, right? There are no
Yeah.
answers, such as life,
Yeah.
right? Life is a continuous journey.
Hmm.
Whatever happens, we just kind of continue on, and it's the way that we actually continue is what makes up our lives.
Hmm.
And I think this show is such an incredible experience of that, and I think that's what audiences resonate to because we all live it.
Yeah, there's something that feels very alive about it, that it's just like I'm over here in the US and Clark is somewhere in New York with his kids, and
Yeah,
halfway across the world,
yeah,
Margaret is there just hoping and praying and searching for something. So it feels very alive to me. It really, really does.
amazing,
Yeah. Well,
fantastic.
thank you so much again for your time.
Thank
Good luck to you
you.
this season and have a good rest of your day.
Appreciate it. Thanks so
Thanks.
much. You too.
Bye.